Hello, good afternoon. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming out. I'm Eric Dawson, manager of the McClung Historical Collection, and welcome to our final program of the year. I don't think the Historical Society has anything else coming up either, so this is a good way to end the year. I think it's a great program. Take some time off December, January, but we'll be back next year with a lot of good programming. You may have heard our next exhibit is going to be on history of baseball in Tennessee. So we're looking forward to that coinciding with the stadium opening, and we'll have some programming based around that. And next year is the 20th anniversary of the creation of the Tennessee Archive of Moving Image and Sound. So we'll be having some programming to celebrate that as well. And as you probably know, TAMIS is the featured presentation today, along with Joanna Overbay, who's joining us to talk about this really special film that was shot in the Vardy community in the late 1940s. Joanna is also the author of Windows on the Past, The Cultural Heritage of Vardy, which I'm told we have about 5 copies of. And you can go to the front desk. He's pulled them if you'd like to purchase this and read more about the Vardy community. And I'll also call your attention to the photographs around the room, the glass plates that were shot in Vardy and blown up. And Joanna was kind enough to bring even more to us today. So we have a great collection of those and decided to display some for you today. Also at the table over there, you'll see a photograph of David Swartz, the gentleman who shot the film, and the actual camera he shot this film with, along with a projector. And it's really remarkable. People who've commented on it so far didn't realize how small 8mm is. And John Morton, who is the head of TAMIS, will walk you through the process of how this film was created and the restoration, and how it really is kind of a really unique and special thing that we were able to have this film preserved and show it to you all today. So I'd like to bring up John.
Thank you, Eric, for the introduction, and thanks to all of you for joining us this afternoon. This is a really great crowd, and we're very pleased to spotlight this really fascinating and really special project that we did, that we're very pleased to be the custodians of this film and to have done the work that we have done with it, and especially to have folks here who are members of the community and a large group of family members of Joanna's family, to have them here as well. I can't think of a better way to get folks together and have kind of everyone involved to kind of enjoy this film and appreciate it. So this is fantastic. We're really pleased that all of you are here. And I'm really pleased to talk to you today about the project that we took at TAMIS to safeguard this film for the future, the preservation work we did on it. I can talk about that. I'm not going to talk too long about that because it is sort of inside baseball and I think it's fascinating, but it might be just a little too technical to keep folks entertained for too long. So I'll be speaking primarily about that. I enjoyed learning what I did about Vardy history in the course of doing this project, but I am by no means an authority about that community. So in my remarks, I won't be saying much about the history of Vardy or interpreting the content of the film. We're going to roll the entire film so you can see it for yourself. And then the folks who are members of the Vardy community, I'll be pleased to defer to them and what they have to say to interpret it. And when we roll the film, it has no sound. Like most of these vintage home movies, they're silent. So we will invite folks to chime in, to comment, to ask questions, and we'll all watch it together and hopefully have a little bit of a conversation and question and answer session at that time. And as Eric mentioned, I do invite you to take a look at the camera and projector at the table over there as we wrap things up. That's a great visual aid for the technology that is behind this historic film. So I'll go ahead and launch into it here.
Dumb question, where is Vardy?
Where is Vardy? It's in Hancock County, that I know. Vardy community members, what I would invite you to chime in and kind of give it a more specific kind of contextualization.
It's exactly where Tennessee and Virginia meet. So Vardy is 3 miles from the Virginia line. in very rural Hancock County. Newman's Ridge and Powell Mountain, we're in the valley between those two mountains.
North of Sneed.
North of Sneed.
North of Sneed.
Thank you so much. Okay, David Swartz, 8mm amateur film of life in the Vardy community in 1948 and 1949, reached the Tennessee Archive of Moving Image and Sound in the early 2000s after the archive's founders had met members of the Vardy Community Historical Society. TAMIS staff had found the film to be in good shape and made a digital transfer of the historic footage with a machine called a telecine, and it's pictured there in the photograph. Running the film through the telecine created a video that was very similar to watching the film on a traditional projector, but with some limitations on the image resolution and color reproduction. But it was still a pretty good transfer, and that was the best capability that the archive had at the time, so that has been a really useful and important reference for us in being able to understand the film. So after this transfer was complete, the film was stored in the archive's secure, climate-controlled vault with no further access for several years. When we put motion picture film in passive storage like that, we like to keep it in cool and dry conditions, ideally no warmer than 50 degrees Fahrenheit with low humidity, and that really helps to keep the natural decay processes that can happen to the film at bay and prolong its life. So while the film has been here at TAMIS, the original artifact, we've been storing it in that way. In 2019, TAMIS obtained a digital film scanner, which yields higher quality and a more faithful reproduction of TAMIS's film holdings than the earlier telecines, and once again, that device is pictured on the screen. Archive staff almost immediately identified David Swartz's amateur film to be retransferred by this scanning process. And this new scan prompted us to sort of refamiliarize ourselves with the film and to recall just how special it is. It also emphasized David Swartz's overall mastery of his 8mm camera and his eye for shot compositions and compelling subjects. Again, you'll see all of that when we roll the film here in a couple minutes. We now felt that the new scan did justice to the special history of the film, and we began to share examples from it in public presentations. However, we still recognize some persistent shortcomings in the TAMIS scan, especially the prominence of scratches on the film and some exposure errors that both Mr. Swartz and TAMIS staff had made in capturing and scanning the film. I like to tell folks that the film scanner we're running here at TAMIS, you think of it as a prosumer device. It's a great machine, and we've gotten great work out of it, but there are some limitations due to the expertise level of our staff, that being me. There are lots of things we can do in-house, but sometimes for special projects, we do work with vendors and seek help outside. So in late 2020, we began planning a more comprehensive preservation plan for the Vardy film, one that would require some extra help outside of TAMIS from the National Film Preservation Foundation. This foundation, which I'll call the NFPF, is an independent nonprofit organization created by the U.S. Congress. It administers an annual grant cycle to fund comprehensive film preservation projects undertaken by other nonprofit organizations. One of our favorite aspects of the grant is that it specifically supports the creation of duplicate film elements. The grant criteria heavily favors so-called orphan films, which are those that are no longer in the care of their creator or copyright holder. Although in this case, I do want to point out that the folks at Vardy have always been very involved in the legacy of this film, so happily, I don't think of it as an orphan film so much as an adopted film or a step film that we have here at TAMIS. These conditions put the NFPF in a unique position to support preservation projects that may otherwise slip through the cracks. Although the Vardy film was in very good shape, it still stood to benefit from a grant-funded preservation process. Because the original footage was shot on 8mm film, the smallest of the popular legacy home movie formats, the scratches on it are dramatically magnified along with the film content during projection and scanning. Under these circumstances, even slight scratches can be very disruptive to the historic images. The slender film strip is also more fragile and more susceptible to total loss from decay processes. Lastly, since 8mm film was used overwhelmingly for amateur purposes, it is not as well supported in film lab and scanning infrastructure as the larger film gauges. Immediate preservation work would safeguard the film, while vendors operating the rare, more specialized, and less robust equipment required for the job were still readily available, along with the expertise of lab technicians who had long working familiarity with the small film system. So I'd like to draw your attention just briefly to the diagram I have up on the screen. Up in the corner, there's the image of, if you imagine a quarter that size, that kind of sets the scale for the images. You see, working our way from the bottom up to the top, 70mm film, called that because it is indeed 70 millimeters wide. That has been used for really deluxe feature film presentations in the past. We go on down to 35mm, which many of you probably know from using in your still cameras. That would have been a more standard exhibition format. 16mm would have been common in classrooms and industrial films, and the two smallest ones up on the top, 8mm and Super 8, were the most budget-oriented and convenient formats for folks shooting home movies. And the Swartz film is, of course, on 8mm, so that is the, as I said, the smallest popular image format that was readily produced in the 20th century, and you can get a sense of the scale, again, from up there comparing to the quarter. Our vendor for this project was a New York City film lab called BB Optics. Their chief technician is a film artist named Bill Brand, who has decades of experience working with small gauge film. At the lab, the film was scanned at 4K resolution with a device called a wet gate, which immerses each film frame in a solvent at the moment that it is rephotographed by the scanner. This solvent, it flows in and fills in scratches on the plastic base of the film, which prevents those scratches from refracting the projected light, illuminating the frame. And the upshot of this is that it severely mitigates the appearance of scratches in the scan. In many cases, it makes them disappear altogether, but even when it doesn't erase them completely, it really does a nice job of eliminating, reducing their appearance in the scan. Bill was very conscious of our intentions for the project, and at our request, visible splices and other artifacts of the film's history, beyond obvious damage, were actually left visible in the final scan. Bill performed some basic color correction and exposure adjustment to remove disruptive inconsistencies from the scan and to emphasize the authentic appearance of the vintage Kodachrome color process that the film uses. Once Bill's color correction was complete, we received a high-quality digital video of the final scan, which you'll see in a couple minutes. Bill also sent the finished scan to Color Lab, a full-service motion picture film laboratory near Washington, D.C. There, the digital scan was printed out to a new 16mm film negative and projection print. Both of these new film elements now reside in the TAMIS vault, and by, quote, blowing up, unquote, the 8mm original to the larger 16mm stock, again, if you remember from the diagram, we are confident in our sturdier film elements that we could now readily project, rescan, or print them at a film lab. So when the dust settles, we have the wonderful digital video that we're able to share very easily and exhibit here in the History Center, and the duplicate negative and the duplicate print. Those are living in the same climate-controlled vault. They don't receive a whole lot of traffic, again, because the digital scan is the easiest way to share and exhibit, but we do retain those as long-term preservation elements. So that is kind of, that's the whole 9 yards of the preservation process, and now I'm going to switch it over to actually showing the film itself. Are there any immediate questions before I get the film rolling? All right, and we'll be happy to take further questions after we view the film here, but we'll go ahead and get that started. Once again, it is silent. By all means, please do feel free to ask questions and make remarks, and we'll have a good time, I'm sure. And I'll note that this National Film Preservation Foundation logo, this of course is not part of the original film. This is, this acknowledges their involvement in the project. But once this logo clears, then everything that follows is the original authentic film. Starting here.
That's my brother, Dan, that's sitting back in the back.
Is that you, Dan? That's you, right?
That is me, the little blonde.
Sorry, wait. That's tobacco. That's Newman's Ridge, I think, on the left.
Oh, that tobacco is absolutely beautiful. Oh, boy.
This is part of our museum.
And that's my sister, Margaret. That's right here. There goes Margaret and my other sister, Charlotte.
How many siblings did you have?
I had my two sisters, Charlotte, who's deceased, and then Margaret, but my older brother, Dan, and then I had a younger brother, Steve. He's not in the movie. He's born too late for the movie.
Was that Bruno?
No.
I'm sorry, I don't know. And this is Dave Swartz, actually. And the water that he's going to dump over his head is not actually dirty water. It looks that way because of the iron content in the water.
Joanna, can you explain who David Swartz was?
Dave Swartz was an intern minister there for the Presbyterian Home Mission Schools. And he went on to become a Presbyterian minister in, where, Naperville, Illinois?
Yeah, and there are other places too.
And other places. That's my mother, Alice Williams. Her picture was hanging in there whenever she was in college at the Voices of the Land. That's my brother Dan.
Oh, that's great.
That's Dave Swartz.
Grapes. Those are
Picking
kind of
muscadines. Those are muscadines up on the ridge.
And that's a frog.
There's
Charlotte and Margaret, and they were picking grapes from the backyard.
Did they grow wild, the grapes?
Concord grapes.
Did the grapes grow wild?
No.
No, they were planted by the dad.
Here they are.
Oh, they make the best jelly.
Oh, that's good.
What's
There's
happening
Preacher
there?
Leonard, there's me again.
Other Leonard. It's Father Leonard.
Yeah.
What is that? Rural Electric Authority.
This was the first power line, is that right, Brenna?
Yes, it's the first electricity to come across from Powell Valley
Wow. And what year was that?
into that valley.
Circa 1948.
When they got power?
After the Rural Electrification Act, we got electricity in the valley.
Wow.
But prior to that, the wires had been strung, and my brother remembers the wires being taken down because of the copper and taken into Oak Ridge for the Manhattan Project.
Wow.
And why are all
Then
these
that's
kids
R.C.
working?
Mullins that was right there. I'm going to tell his story in just a minute.
Yeah. Was it part of school?
The school, since it was Presbyterian, had a work-study ethic. You worked, then you went to school. And everyone enjoyed working because that got them out of school. It was a fun time to go work. Said, let me dig that ditch so I don't have to do my math.
Was it just the boys?
The girls also did work inside. That was Anderson Bell. He lived up on top of the ridge.
Was he
And
related
Pete
to him?
Swinney, who is still around.
What are they getting out of trees?
Those are muscadines. Oh, okay, thank you. That's how the valley looks from, we're looking from Newman's Ridge over to Owl Mountain. And the valley is below, of course, with the creek, Blackwater Creek running between the two. Actually, that vantage point is where the Aunt Mahaley log cabin was located. She was a legendary moonshiner.
Oh, wow.
That's separate.
So cute. Oh, my goodness.
I have a good story about that pig I'll tell sometime to somebody.
Original
What did you call that, Joanna?
That was the trolley, and this is rope swing.
Oh, it's incredible.
This was on the upper playground at the Vardy school. I think that's my dad there. Yeah, it is my dad.
He's so handsome. Suited to his family.
No, that's not dad. No, that was not dad, that was my Uncle Watson. That was Preacher Leonard. Sunday afternoons, they would have baseball up on the upper playground. And these were the Trent twins on the seesaw, Una and Buta Trent.
And Una's still alive.
And Una is still alive. She lives in Illinois, married to a minister. I guess he's probably retired now. Roxy Davidson.
Horseshoes?
Betty Mullins.
You're gonna love seeing this football in a minute.
Yeah.
I think they made up their own rules as the greatest.
Not like soccer, not like rugby, soccer. True football.
There was a water fountain. We had bubbling water in the water fountain, not a dipper or pail as most people in rural East Tennessee had at their schools.
Fed from a spring, was that right? The water bubble? Well. A well?
This is part of the work crew, getting the wood for the school. We had Ben Franklin stoves in each classroom.
How big people in the Vardy community? In the Vardy community, they went to the school there. It was Presbyterian school.
What was the population of the community?
I have no idea.
Not very many.
Dave Swartz again.
No scratches.
That was between the Rankin Cottage and the church. The Rankin Cottage is where one of the missionaries lived, and Dave Swartz lived there when he was there.
It's in the background. Is that Dan?
That looks like my older brother Dan, who's sitting in the back.
Oh, how great.
There is Dan again. Dave Swartz. You can see that he was quite a popular person in the community because of all the shenanigans that he was involved in. That is me. And then Margaret sitting in front, then Charlotte and Dan.
I have the earmuffs on.
There's always somebody.
My dad with Huey Mullins, that's R.C. Mullins, his father. R.C. was one of our board members and president of the Vardy Community Historical Society.
There was our garage.
And there's the Aunt Mahaley log cabin that R.C. was the last person, his family was the last person who lived there. And that's the log cabin there. That is located now across from the church. We moved it down. My brother Dan owned it, and he donated it to the Historical Society for us to preserve. So we have it there on site where you can go and visit. R.C., Betty Lou, his sister.
What a hairdo.
And then that was Ralph. Ralph and Betty Lou are deceased. R.C. lives in Maryville.
No motor cars at that time.
Well, that was on the ridge and not even, they didn't even have a highway, did they?
No,
Is that their mother? Is that Laura?
Do you know who that is,
Is that
Brandon?
Laura?
I'm not sure. It's,
William.
but the Gibsons that lived up the road there across from, close to where the Gibson Cemetery is now. That's what the road looked like when we were kids.
That's the way they worked on it.
And that's how they worked on it, repairing the road. And that was Ed Williams. He was the father of Troy Williams, who was the president of our organization when we began in 1998.
Did you have a mail car come through those roads, or did you have to go to town for mail?
Mail. Did you have mail?
Yes, we had mail. It was, that's Aunt Nancy Collins, Miser, hog killing time.
Is it lawful?
I think they still do that in some areas, killing hogs like that.
No scratches.
And that's what the ridge looked like in front of our home there.
Is that you, man? No.
I think his name is Wealthy Moore. And this lady we called Lit Mammy because she babysat with us when my mother and father were away to take care of my sister who was in the hospital. That was M. Gibson.
That's my third great grandmother, Emily Gibson.
That's great.
Look at her.
Knee replacements back then.
Right.
No, it's probably something she's taken to a neighbor. That wasn't her
This
house.
is after a community gathering in the schoolhouse. There's Laura Mullins, R.C. Mullins' mother. There's my sister Charlotte. And my mother's cousin Lily Ann Gross.
Luigi.
Yeah, Louis Jean Williams. There's Lily Ann Gross again. Troy Watson. Edson Watson. My dad, Drew Williams. Margaret.
Everyone's so well dressed.
Yeah.
Did you go to town to get your clothes or?
Went to Knoxville into Middlesboro to get her clothing. Stella Miser.
Kentucky.
The sheep that the minister kept to mow the grass. That was his father. Had chickens, of course, for meals and to lay eggs and so forth. That's my mother, who was also a teacher. Alice Williams. That was their school. It was 3 stories, 96 windows, state-of-the-art school for East Tennessee. The curriculum was designed by the Columbia University.
Wow. Where'd the money come from for that?
The Presbyterian women were the ones who financed the school.
Wow.
They had a plethora of home mission schools throughout America and internationally and nationally. That's the Rankin Cottage. That's the way it looks today, restored, of course. The church, the steeple is not as tall now. That was Margaret Thompson, one of the teachers. And some people did have cars. Eliza Goins, who was one of the teacher aides. There's the football. Had a rough life, didn't it? That was Mr. Leonard's sister that was there taking pictures. Mr. Leonard and Mrs. Leonard, and then that's I guess that's his brother, and that was his sister-in-law that we did see, not his sister. Dave Swartz, he's kind of got a liking to the teacher there, the young teacher, Margaret Thompson. But I don't think that romance went anywhere, of course.
Maybe
Except fishing, they went fishing. There's the minister again. And this is the way he plowed his garden.
Oh, I know.
Teaching
Dave Swartz again. Dave's trying to learn how to push that plow.
Wow, what a great.
There's Dan.
Who is she?
Who was that lady?
The lady.
The lady was a lady that was keeping house for my mom. That's in our front yard. So you can see our porch, and that's our windows from where we were born and grew up. There's my brother Dan coming through, my cousin Troy Watson, and me again. And then this is my cousin Jake Watson. Margaret just told me not to say who that girl was when they could talk.
Thanks.
They all were like,
Told me not to. That's me and out front of the church, in front of, that's Asa Gibson. Actually, a Cherokee Indian.
And the
Bill
community-
Gross, who is a German native.
New York.
Preacher Leonard, Kenosha, Wisconsin. Father Leonard, not Father Leonard, but Father Gross from Germany. Mother Gross from Germany.
So what brought them to that community from Germany?
Josephine Leonard, the community's still there, but the people are changed, of course.
Why did the Grosses move to Hancock County?
Bill Gross was in World War I, and he met a friend of his there who, in World War I, who brought him to Vardy, and he met the sister of his friend, Lily Gross, who was Aunt Nancy Miser's daughter, and Bill married Lily Gross. And so they stayed in the community. His mother and father, stepmother, were living in New York, and this was a time between World War I and World War II. And the animosity toward the Germans in New York got so bad that they decided to leave New York City and come and live in Vardy, where it was more peaceful and not as oriented toward making, snide remarks because of their being German.
Can we hand them to the podium so the camera can hear them? And whatever remarks.
Okay. Well, the movie that you have just seen was a peek at life in Vardy, but by no means does it tell the complete story. To tell more of the story and to preserve the history of Vardy, we began the Vardy Community Historical Society in 1998. Shortly afterward, we received a grant from Humanities Tennessee to collect oral memories of those who attended the Vardy Community School and Church. Vardy was one of the many Presbyterian home mission schools that the Presbyterian women sponsored throughout America, and particularly in the Appalachians. With their sponsorship came not only the development of the school, but also the church's Sunday school programs. And one of those programs was the annual Christmas program. For months before the Christmas program, the Presbyterian women sent boxes of toys, games, all kinds of clothing, shoes, anything that they thought that the community would need. So the church's elders would gather in the Rankin cottage, and they'd put long tables out and spread brown paper onto those tables. And they would write each child's name on that brown paper. And then they would go through the boxes and they would dispense the items in the boxes according to the need of that child. And afterwards, they would wrap up the brown paper and put the red paper ribbon on top of it. And they would take those over to church. And we had a large Christmas tree that sat in the corner of the church. And whenever Christmas Day came, the children would perform the Christmas story, and they were dressed in the role of key characters. Afterwards, the elders would present the gifts, which included boxes of hard candy. I have an example of a box of hard candy over there on the table so you can see what that looks like. Among the oral histories were the memories of the Christmases, and they topped the list of discussion topics. One of our board members, R.C. Mullins, told this story to his wife, Macy, to fulfill part of his oral histories. So I'm going to read to you R.C.'s story. My hard candy Christmas. There was total darkness in our little home on top of Newman's Ridge. You saw his home on top of Newman's Ridge. The only noise to be heard was the old alarm clock ticking. My excitement woke me early this day, for it was Christmas. I heard Mom finally getting up. She lit the kerosene lamp, for we had no electricity, and made her way to the fireplace to build a fire. It was a cold winter morning. I lay there watching the fire burn in the fireplace. I dared not come out from under the warm covers that had taken so long to get warm the night before. I was so excited I could hardly stand it. I just wanted to jump into my clothes and head for church, for it was at church that we would get our Christmas. I heard Mom in the kitchen getting breakfast. The smell of ham frying and biscuits baking was more than I could stand. So out of bed I rolled. It was so cold that I had to hurry to get dressed. I pulled on my bibbed overalls, and today I got to wear my new shirt that Mom had made me. I tiptoed fast across the cold floor to the fireplace, where Mom was warming our shoes and socks. I went into the kitchen to watch Mom as she fixed her breakfast. I pulled out one of the empty dynamite boxes that we used as seats and plopped myself down. Mom reminded me that it was Christmas Day, and I needed to get cleaned up so I'd be ready for breakfast, because we didn't want to be late for church. I went to the washstand and poured a couple of dipperfuls of cold water out of the water bucket into the washpan. Mom brought over the tea kettle and poured enough hot water into the washpan to make good warm water to wash. After I finished, I brushed my teeth and hair, and I pulled back the curtains to look outside. It was breaking day. The rooster began to crow. Everything was covered with a blanket of snow, for it had been snowing for 2 days. It was finally time for breakfast. It seemed extra good this morning. Mom was a good cook. She got up and cleared the table and began getting ready for church. It was finally time to go. We all wrapped up real good for a journey down the ridge and across the footlog over Blackwater Creek and through the field. As I crossed the footlog, I saw Troy Williams heading toward church. I yelled for him to wait up for me. Troy and I had been buddies for a long time. We had been in the same class together ever since the first grade. Troy and I continued on to church. As we opened the door and stepped into the foyer, we could smell Christmas. That big old cedar tree was being warmed by the Christmas light, and putting off an aroma that was wonderful. We both were so excited that we stepped inside the church, our eyes fastened onto that huge tree that went from the floor to the ceiling. It had lots of bright colored lights, decorations, little toys, and boxes of candy. It was a sight that has always stayed with me. On this day, Preacher Leonard would tell the Christmas story, and we would have plays and programs performed by the children. I could hardly wait till it was over so we could get our Christmas. That little box of hard candy is what I had waited for. I'd not had any since last Christmas. My dad worked hard, but some days he worked all day for $1 or less. There was not much work to be found in those days, so candy was a luxury we couldn't afford. When I got my box of candy, I hurried outside so I could open it. As I looked inside at all the pretty colored pieces, I took out one and placed it in my mouth. How good it was. I dare not bite into it, for I wanted it to last a long time. That night, as I lay in my bed with my 2 brothers, I felt so grateful. I always had to share my bed with my 2 brothers, and most of the time wear hand-me-down clothes. But this little box of candy, it was all mine. I opened my eyes to take one more peep at my box of candy before going to sleep. Then I closed my eyes and felt such happiness inside. And I hoped that all little kids everywhere had their own boxes of candy and that they had a wonderful Christmas just like me. I thought that was appropriate to read to you since it's Christmas time, and I wanted to show you that there was more to the community than what you saw in the movie. Sorry. My brother and sister, as you know, are here, and they're willing to answer any questions that you may have about the movie or our community. And feel free to pick up one of our brochures out there whenever you go leave. Yes?
When did the school close?
The school closed sometime in the 70s when the Presbyterians moved out and left the school to the county. The county didn't have the funds to maintain the school or the programs that we had been accustomed to, because we had top-notch everything. We had audio visuals that other schools did not have in rural East Tennessee. We had movies and film strips, and we were always performing. We would have to get up in front of a group. So that's why, as growing up, we had no problem of, getting up and talking, telling people our story, because we were used to doing that. Every week we had assembly programs, and each classroom was in charge of the assembly program. Some of us got to read the Bible, and some of us had to read stories. Some of us had to lead some kind of recitation that we had learned in class. Margaret, can you remember any of the other things that we did?
What was the year of that Christmas story?
Pardon me?
The year?
The year was in the 40s. You saw the movie that was about the year
Yeah,
that...
but the story that you just read,
Yes.
that was in the
Story
40s.
in his,
Oh, it is...
none of the story you read.
The story is in the book that we wrote, that I wrote, Windows on the Past, and it's a collection.
1948.
Yeah. Well, it would have been not, the story would have been 1948, but the book was written in 2005. So we collected the oral histories. I don't know if I answered your question or not.
Yes, 48, I got it.
Okay. Any other questions?
I got a question. I saw tobacco. What other crops? were raised in that area?
I'm sorry, I have,
Crops.
Yeah, crops.
What crops are in the valley?
Besides tobacco,
Tobacco,
wheat,
corn.
Were you farming?
tobacco, wheat, and corn.
what did we grow? Okay, we grew tobacco, as you saw, corn. We grew our own beef, our own pork. We had chickens and eggs and everything that would keep a family going and a community going. Everyone in the valley had their own gardens. They did their own canning. We were self-sufficient. Aaron, would you like to add anything to that?
I find something fascinating, and there was an animal you may have saw in there, sheep.
Yeah.
You don't see sheep a lot, and just like the Presbyterians, the sheep are gone too. But the gentleman, Father Leonard, had attempted to introduce sheep to the community as another form of livestock and things, but it did not stick. And but primarily, yeah, backer, as we called it, was a cash crop. Yeah, that was for money and for your ticket at the local grocer, which Mr. Gross was a owner of a local store.
Where was the store?
I don't know if Margaret, can you answer part of?
He already answered it mainly himself. Only Father Leonard,
Yeah. Oh, easy.
only Father Leonard was the one who grew, who had the sheep. None of the other people in the valley had sheep, or very few of them. But we had also wheat and corn, which fed the animals, and we had the own mills for making flour and cornmeal and things of that sort, so. Did that answer your question?
Where was the store?
Where was the store? Where was the store?
It was, next to the church was Father Leonard's, Mr. and Mrs. Leonard's home. And then after that was Aunt Nancy's home, and then there was the church. It was really close to the church.
I don't think.
Right here.
200 or 300 people.
I don't think any.
Most of our groceries in Sneedville or Middlesboro or something like that.
Knoxville and Caswalker store.
Where was the market for the tobacco?
What was the market for the tobacco?
Where was the market? Where did they take it?
Yeah, okay.
What was your question? I'm sorry.
Haslam Gap,
Did Dan answer that?
Rogersville. There were tobacco markets all over Knoxville.
What was the distance from Vardy to Rogersville?
About 30 miles.
30, okay.
And how far is Sneedville?
Well, used to, I would think it was about 80 miles. I'm not sure if that's what it is nowadays, but back when I was a child, it said 80 miles.
You get your tobacco to Margaret first.
Margaret.
Where was the closest train station? Was there a train station?
The closest train station was over in Denver,
So you know
Virginia,
where it
Yes.
is.
and it was just, we'd go down the road to the Fortune Road over Mulberry Gap, and then on over to Denver, which is on 58, so Route 58 now, but that train station is no longer there.
Did people travel by train?
Yes, people, not during my time, but during my mother's time, she traveled a lot by train because she was educated over at the Peace Home School, which was Presbyterian school, over in Asheville, North Carolina. And it was where Vanderbilt Village was, Celine took it out, but it was located there. And she used to tell about having the girls who had gone to Vardy to Peace Home School being invited up to play with the little girls at the Vanderbilt Mansion. And I used to think, yeah, I believe that, Mom.
Can you talk about some of the kids that went away to college that Vardy?
Well, I think that the majority during our time, the majority of us went on to college. My sister went to Berea College. My brother graduated from LMU. I went to Warren Wilson College, which was a Presbyterian college, and then transferred on, graduated from the University of Tennessee.
And whenever I went to Berea, there were other
Most,
kids there from Vardy who went to Berea too.
yeah.
Beatrice Trent and Peggy Mullins was also there at the same time. That was in
I don't think that
55
microphone's
to
working.
59.
It's not on. It's not working.
Oh, it's
That
not.
microphone's not working. There's really no point.
Can you tell me a little bit of the outside experiences that you got at Vardy School that maybe other folks didn't? Because you had, am I correct, you had missionaries from other countries that would come, and you had some exposure to the wider world, maybe that other schools didn't, is that correct?
Berea College would send musicians there to give us concerts and things of that sort. But Mr. Leonard had lots of slides from all over the world, and he would present those during assembly time, as we called it. And then on the weekends, sometimes we would have things at Saturday night, and they would invite us to come there, and they would present programs that would show us different parts of the world.
How far from Berea were you? Was Vardy?
Probably about well, at that time it was about 2 to 3 hours, but I'm not sure because I don't live that area anymore. I'm not sure how many miles.
But for them to invite you was a big deal. It's for you to travel 3 hours to.
No, they came to us.
Oh, they came to you.
Yeah, they came to us, the musicians came to us, and square dancing and all kinds of different, they would send different groups from Berea just to educate us more or less.
What did the men do for work?
What did people do?
What did the men do for work?
They grew tobacco. That was the main income, the main, the farms. They
And
sell the
timber
corn in
and mining in
Rogersville
Virginia.
and the tobacco in the various tobacco markets in Tazewell and where else? Rogersville, I guess.
And they also grow, pigs and cows.
So we have to wrap up the official program here, but I'm sure you all will sit around. If you have more questions for them, you can speak to them. Yeah.
Can I just invite everyone to please come out to the museum in Hancock County? You can find us at vardymuseum.org. We would love to have you come visit us sometime. By the way, I'm Aaron Collins. I'm the president of the organization. We have brochures over here, and if you would like a complimentary newsletter, put your name and email, and we'll get that to you also.
It's mostly open on the weekends, is that right? I mean, it's not open
May,
all the time.
yes, May through October is when it's open on Saturdays, but you'll find that information on our website.
Okay. Well, thank you so much to John Morton from TAMIS, Joanna, and all the Vardy residents.